Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday evening, August 14th. Got a lot to cover tonight here, but let's begin with competing sound bites from Obama and Ryan.
These are the folks who say the deficit and the debt are the biggest problem we've got. And yet, they now want to give a $5 trillion tax cut.
As you see the president come through on his bus tour, you might ask him the same question that I'm getting asked from people all around America, and that is, where are the jobs, Mr. President?
Those sound bites underline the two fundamentally different visions the two campaigns are laying out here. Contrast made even more stark by Romney's choice of Paul Ryan as his running mate. Now, the country is just getting to know who Mr. Ryan is. We know he rode a Wienermobile as a young man. Yes, that was the job, and is obsessed with fitness. But tonight, we're going to dig a little bit deeper here and get a closer look at where he stands on some of the key issues. And his famed budget plan is probably a good place to start. Now, this plan lays out a very clear plan for Medicare reform, a plan that would, starting in 2023, provide retirees with vouchers to purchase private plans, insurance, or government-run insurance. That means that private insurers would be forced to compete with the traditional Medicare program. The idea is to drive down costs, but it could leave seniors out in the cold because they would have to pay out of pocket for any additional costs not covered by the voucher. And he'd also like to cap federal spending increases on Medicare at a specific rate, which means that if health care costs rise faster as projected, seniors would have to pay more out of pocket. Now, that's just on Medicare. A lot of other things to dig into his budget, including the plan to raise taxes on everybody making 30 grand or less a year, but gives tax breaks to those making more than $1 million. His plan slashes spending on discretionary and mandatory programs, and according to some estimates, like from the CBO, Ryan's budget plan would cause more than 4 million jobs to be lost. It also cuts Pell Grants, which, as you know, if you're paying for tuition for the kid, will kick about 1 million students off the program nationwide. Now, we've heard a lot about his reputation as a fiscal hawk and obsession with budgets. People on both sides of the aisle say that is a very fair characterization. But where does he stand on social issues? Well, he's very strongly pro-life, co-sponsored a personhood amendment, which would effectively outlaw abortion, some forms of contraception, and in vitro fertilization. He's opposed same-sex marriage and voted against adoption rights for same-sex couples. But he did vote for a bill that would prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. He received an A rating from the NRA, and he voted most recently against the DREAM Act. So in the end, Romney will be defined at least somewhat by his running mate. Is this the definition he wanted? I want to bring in the panel to get into this. T.J. McCormick, conservative radio talk show host; Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, who did a fine job hosting last night; and former representative from the great state of Connecticut, Republican Rob Simmons. Congressman, thank you. T.J., Dom, as always, I appreciate it. All right. Next segment, I want to get into the politics of this, if this is a good or a bad choice, depending on the different parts of the electorate, let alone the electoral map here, how it'll work or not. But let's first start with who he is as a person. And I said from the very beginning, regardless of where you fall politically on the map, this at least, with about 3 months left for the population at home, they at least get to have a clear choice as the type of government and the type of country they want. Because there are two very different visions here from at least the Ryan plan, which Mitt Romney seems to have wholeheartedly endorsed, and the Obama-Biden plan, if you want to call it that, which is a different idea for the role of government here. At least that much we agree on, right? There's a distinction with a difference between the two groups, right?
Oh, absolutely. I served with Paul Ryan for 6 years. And it's interesting, during that whole period, I never was aware of him as a social conservative as much as a fiscal conservative, unlike Rick Santorum, by contrast, whose major interest in Congress, in the Senate, was social issues. Paul was on the Budget Committee and went on to become the chairman of the Budget Committee. He knows the budgets. He's a policy wonk. He's into those issues in detail, and he can talk to seniors about their situation and his plans to deal with their situation, even in a Democrat district, and win. Because he is sincere, he is informed, and he wants to bring about constructive change to his district, to his state, and now to the United States of America.
Let me just say, I don't know it to be true, but I'll just say that he believes what he says, which with a lot of politicians, that may not be the case. But let's say what shaped his worldview. His most favorite author and the book that he would hand out to interns and what he cited as one of his great sources was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, who, as many know, is one of the biggest libertarian voices, Fountainhead, etc. Sure. Well, she said, among other things in her book, that selfishness is a virtue. She called altruism evil, condemned Christianity for advocating compassion for the poor. Now, this year, to be fair, you've had our new vice presidential hopeful saying that he denounced parts of the book. But for the entirety of his political career, he called this the most influential bit of writing that he ever framed it around. And Dominic, for me, I can see the commercial already. The idea that it's, you know, have versus have not, I made mine, you're on your own, self-sufficiency, I don't want to hear you got problems here. That's how this thing's going to be broken down. We'll get into the other policy stuff. But when you wrap your arms around that, aren't you giving voters a clear idea? I'm for me, you take care of yourself?
Well, I would tend to definitely agree with your assessment, the way you just laid it out, and I'm sure that the congressman I'm sure you two have a different opinion the way I see this, but it's a clear, stark situation in which the Democrats, the way it's being presented from the two different tickets, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Democrats are saying a safety net. We're here to help you, and what we're hearing from the Republicans is that cut the budget. That's the top priority. I mean, people are facing foreclosure, food stamps, eviction notices, and it seems like the Republican ticket is saying, we hear you, but we've got to cut taxes for the rich, and that's the way to grow the economy. Been there, done that. That's how we got in this situation. So I would agree with you. It's a clear, stark situation. Some would say between right and wrong. Republicans would say they're the ones that's right.
I'll give him points here that at least he had the courage to put on paper and stand by that he has a plan. But his plan specifically says, I'm going to cut down the tax code to 2 tax rates.
Right.
25% and 10%. Okay? Anybody making 30 grand or less, they're going to be paying more in taxes now.
They're going to be paying taxes.
No.
They're going to be paying taxes to begin with.
No. Okay, they don't. But now they will be.
Right. So you can't raise taxes, but you can implement taxes, and that's
TJ, by definition, you can raise taxes if you don't pay any now, but you would then. Okay. But secondarily, you're going to reduce the top tax rate in this country, which already the top 1%, as you know, I don't have to educate you, have done better than they ever have the last 10 years in any moment in our history. You're going to cut that from the mid-30s down to 25%. That's $1 trillion they estimate less it's going to go into the coffers, and they're going to have to make up the cuts. He's not going to touch defense. He's not going to touch some of the third rail programs here. You're going to take it out of basically the safety net programs. How is this not a have-have?
What bigger third rail program other than Social Security is Medicare? I mean, the man. That's what all the hubbub is about, is Medicare. He's going to go and take a big bite out of that down the road, which, by the way, does not include anybody. Go ahead, Congressman.
And you're absolutely correct. But the biggest bite out of Medicare has already been bitten. That was Obamacare that took over $700 billion out.
The only candidate in this race right now who's done any damage to Medicare is Barack Obama.
He's taking it out. I paid into Medicare my whole life. I'm ready to go on to Medicare. I'm on Medicare, and $700 billion takes a hike to Obamacare.
You know this issue better than any of us because you dealt with it in Washington. But is it really fair to say that Obama is taking $700 billion out of Medicare when, in actuality, what he's really doing is these are projections on future costs? It doesn't impact a single person right now.
I'll be more fair. It wasn't just Barack Obama. It was Nancy Pelosi, it was Harry Reid, and it was the Democrats who voted for it in Congress.
That's more fair.
And Obama himself referred to them as cuts when he swore to never ever rescind those cuts.
That's right.
He called them cuts himself in an interview with 60 Minutes.
And I'll be fair with you on another point. Yes, these are projections into the future, but the Romney plan or the Ryan plan is also a plan. The vice president has no power to do anything.
Okay, but except there's been a problem. Since he's chosen him on 5 different occasions, he's embraced the budget plan of one Paul Ryan. And moreover, let's see what else is in the plan. Wait a minute.
Okay.
But you guys had to pay, time out. You guys had to pay tuition for your kids?
Right.
Pell Grants. You're going to cut Pell Grants? It's one of the few things. No, he does. He wants to cut Pell Grants.
Richard,
he wants to privatize Social Security.
You have to stop.
No, I don't. If you're going to privatize Social Security, I only ask one thing. 2008 isn't a generation ago. What would have happened if people had privatized Social Security plans when the market went in the toilet? Who would have made up for grandma and grandpa eating cat food? How does that work?
Do you realize if the Pell Grants were cut, that I wouldn't be sitting at this table right now? I wouldn't have a college education if it wasn't for those Pell Grants.
I served in the Senate as a staffer and the House as a member. The House initiates the budget. They send it to the Senate. The Senate revises it, sends it back. Then you have a conference committee to judge an individual on the basis of what they vote for in the House and send to the Senate that never goes any further is to ignore. Wait a minute, is to ignore what the process
So we're supposed to not. So we're supposed to not take seriously what the candidate's platform is.
It's a proposal. The best part of Paul Ryan. The best part of Paul Ryan is we have a guy who knows the issues and we can have an educated debate instead of talking about putting people back in chains,
and Romney
which is ridiculous.
And Romney absolutely has embraced the thing, but he has also said every single time, I have my plan, I endorse his, but I have my plan.
Well, that's a perfect segue.